generally most CISOs are focusing on this side. So what can I do to protect? And I think that's very, very important. But I think an equal amount of mind share needs to be on the right side, which is how am I leveraging AI to better protect the company? We've always talked, you can only fight AI with AI, but then you need to put equal amount of mind shares on this side of, where are we leaning into early to really leverage AI to get better, faster, more efficient?
Welcome to the Cybersecurity Defenders Podcast, where we talk to the people who keep the internet safe. These industry experts share their innovative cyber defense technologies, vital insights into threats, and predictions for the future of cybersecurity. My name is Christopher Luft. I'm one of the co-founders of LimaCharlie, and I will be your host. This podcast is brought to you by LimaCharlie, maker of the SecOps Cloud platform, infrastructure for SecOps where everything is built API first. Scale with confidence as your business grows. Start today for free at limacharlie.io. Now let's get into it. My guest today is Michael Baker, Vice President and Global Chief Information Security Officer at DXC Technology. Michael has over 2 decades of experience in cybersecurity leadership, including prior roles as CISO at General Dynamics Information Technology and as a senior manager at EY. He has worked extensively across the aerospace, defense, and consulting sectors, focusing on risk management, compliance, and building high-performance security teams. Michael also serves in advisory roles within the cybersecurity community and was named Capital Area CISO of the Year in 2025. Thanks so much for being on the show with us, Michael. It's a real honor to have you here today.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate being here. I'm excited to have this conversation finally. I've been planning it for a while.
Yeah. I'm always interested in how folks got started in technology and how that turned into a career in cybersecurity. Do you want to maybe walk us through what that journey looked like for you?
Yeah, I think it was pretty similar to many journeys that most of your guests, I think, have shared here. Child of the 90s, I should say. It's kind of dating me at this point, but grew up in interesting technology era, right? I was just very fortunate to grow up. I think every generation is very fortunate to grow up in the time they are. I think there's challenges associated with it, but also a lot of opportunities. And growing up in that time, being able to kind of touch and feel technology pre-internet, the emergence of the internet, all the cool stuff that was going down there. You go back to like the movie, and taking it real back, like the movie Hackers in like 1995, right? Just an interesting time to be alive, and really, spark the imagination for me, and I think a lot of people of our generation in terms of, what is this whole thing? And, just interesting, dealing with bulletin board systems and, kind of that early online, culture and technology there just spawned for me, a lifelong curiosity that really continues to this day. Got started in that measure, just started, playing around, tinkering around, doing that. And then, fortunately or unfortunately for me, never really stopped. And I was really good. I went to school and I was able to, have a major here in Virginia that set me up. Had a really good opportunities coming out of school that I'm really fortunate for, working for a top tier firm like an E&Y, or at the time, again, dating myself, it was Arthur Andersen that I was interviewing for, but being able to go like seamlessly from, kind of that junior curiosity to college, to then getting amazing job opportunities in the early 2000s to really extend that and start to grow a career was really good for me. And then, I've always said this, and I've said this on a few other, podcasts and conversations, right? Which, if you're going to start a career, I think, an Ernst & Young or a Deloitte or one of these consultancies in which at a young age, you're put in a position to really like dive into the boardroom, so to speak, or at least in rooms with executives, seeing a ton of different companies, seeing a ton of different sort of cultures and problem sets and things like that. Spending 14 years at EY was really, for me, a very long and extended, almost executive training course. So took a ton out of that experience. And generally as it relates to cyber, it was just always my point of passion, right? So I've done a lot of different technology things. I've done auditor sort of sort of tasks. I've done different sorts of modes, particularly in that early part of my career, but I always gravitated back towards cybersecurity, protecting data, protecting, personnel security, protecting personal information is just something that was always passionate for me. So super long-winded answer for that, but that's kind of that's how we got here.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I love how you talk about the excitement that I'm also a child of the 90s. The excitement there was around technology, watching the internet emerge and just like this crazy new thing that like really changed the way everything works. And I know we're going to talk about it a little more today, but it's kind of how I feel right now with the advent of AI. And, I find myself back in the code and just really excited about, what's emerging right now. And it's just such an interesting field.
It's a little different than a 2400 baud modem that came with problems. I was able to convince my parents to get a second phone line for the dial-up line at the time. I mean, look, we've ridden a lot of waves. You had mentioned, my intro. I currently am at DXC Technology, which is just a large global, IT provider, right? Again, 130,000 employees globally across 60 or 70 countries, serving, 200 plus of the Fortune 500, just in areas of, cloud migration, security, modern workplace, custom applications. But even here at DXC, like we have completely leaned into the AI revolution, right? In terms of the fact that I think very honestly and accurately, this is going to disrupt everything we do. So when you look at all the waves we've been through, the internet that we lived through in the 90s and 2000s, mobile, cloud, and now AI, it's a fun time to pick the wave back up again, right?
Yeah, that's right. And an old guy like me can jump into the code base again because I don't have to learn a new language every 2 months.
I even jump into the code base again, but I'm certainly reading my share of papers here. And it's one of those things where I think it's staying fresh is a really hard thing to do. But I think whatever your passion is, right? Maybe you're still passionate about networking, or you're passionate about crypto or quantum or AI. Like I think, being able to seize onto that, passion and curiosity that you may have is something that keeps you fresh and kind of on the bleeding edge and keeps you from being stale.
All right. So how would you then personally define AI and cybersecurity? Do you think of it as like automation, cognition, or something else entirely differently? Like what's the role there?
Well, I think we're still trying to figure it out a little bit, right? I think in some ways it's a natural evolution of the automation journey that we've been on for many years. So we went, we've been automating for a long time. Then we had something called SOAR, right? To be able to automate certain tasks within a security operations space. We've certainly been automating through workflows and coding. I think, but what it means to me and what's really different here is the democratization of the capability across a broader space of people. And I think that's really, really important. The tools make some of these activities, these processes, the things that we do in a cyber team every day more accessible to a lot more people, right? So again, you can do natural language coding on a workflow within a specific tool, and you don't have to have 3 or 4 years of experience to do that. So I think that's a pretty big milestone in where we are kind of as an industry and what this affords. We've been talking about a talent gap for 15 years. This is, I think, the technology that's going to allow a lot more people to come into the industry and the business, be an opportunity-led environment. I think, I try to bias on the side of, that this AI is going to provide more fruitful, more fulfilling opportunities for the human beings. And I think that's just one that's going to occur. But I look at it very specifically and tactically. I'm trying to protect a large global enterprise of over 100,000 people, thousands of customers of different data types. I look at it, I try to boil it down to its most simple terms. One is, what am I doing to protect the company from the risks of AI? And there are many risks. There's new cyber risks, there's new data leakage risks, there's new
social engineering,
bias risks, social engineering. There's a whole bunch of stuff over there. And then on the right side, and I think the challenge is, Chris, it's generally most CISOs are focusing on this side. So what can I do to protect? And I think that's very, very important. But I think an equal amount of mind share needs to be on the right side, which is how am I leveraging AI to better protect the company? We've always talked, you can only fight AI with AI, but then you need to put equal amount of mind shares on this side of, where are we leaning into early to really leverage AI to get better, faster, more efficient? And, in my brain, I have roadmaps on each one of these, and overlaying it all is really a culture of opportunity and enablement, right? Mm-hmm. To be the party of no, to be the party of, the contrarian security person that's going to say, I'm going to block this, I'm going to say no to that. That's not going to work in this era. Mm-hmm. And I think if we look back at our cloud journey, when most security teams would just say, well, it's someone else's computer, and they'd be very contrarian about it and kind of blocked it for 2 or 3 years. That happened. Now we ended up getting over it, starting to understand a shared responsibility model, leaned into the new risk landscape, and started operating. But we had 2 or 3 years to do that and come to terms with that. I don't think we have 2 or 3 years. We've had 2 really since the world got changed upside down, but I think we have 6 months. I think we have a year, because every company that's not going to leverage this, or at least be experimenting to try to figure out where the best ROI is quite frankly going to be left behind. And I don't think there's any doubt about that in my mind or in a lot of business leaders' minds as well.
I think we crossed like a tipping point 6 to 8 months ago. We've been very early in on AI all the way along, playing with it, getting to know it, seeing it, and you just watch the capabilities of it, grow on this exponential curve. And I think it was 6 to 8 months ago when it just clicked, like, wow, this is something that's going to change something. This isn't a toy. This is like becoming more and more powerful. I work with Claude Code all the time, being able to build projects in a engineering mindset while using this kind of fuzzy AI that can make decisions and do stuff for you. It's unbelievable.
Well, we have it universally here at DXC, a universally enabled AI workforce, right? At a minimum, we provide the chat capability to access your data more intelligently, quickly, organized stuff, right? We're big Copilot customers, et cetera. We lean in really heavy on code development using AI. And quite frankly, if you look at the cyber side of it, I had mentioned, like, how are we using AI to better protect the company? I had some pretty deep thoughts earlier in this year about what that could look like. And when the output of that was, if I look at a process within the company where a human hour is extremely repeatable, but low value per hour, that's right for AI disruption. And it's going to be super ugly in the short term. Let's be clear. I mean, a lot of these tools and these capabilities are emerging, but like I said, I don't think any company should be left behind. Mm-hmm. So when I look in like a standard cyber shop, and you look at the stratification of how people are spending their time, again, value per time to the protection or risk reduction of the company, there's really 3 that jump out at me very, very quickly. One is lower tiers of a security operations center. That's number 1. Number 2 is vulnerability management. Number 3 is attack and pen sort of stuff. And there's other items, right? You could think about who's checking the hardening or configuration compliance of your infrastructure, things like that. But let's just take like security operations center, for example. We've been automating the heck out of security operations centers for like years. 5, 6, 7 years, right? It was originally called workflow, and then it was called SOAR, and it was called this, and it was that. But now we have the capability to ultimately replace the lower tier 1 operators with an AI engine to make fruitful decisions, to take tickets and throw context on them, to make basic determinations of whether it's benign or requires human intervention. And then off you go. And then what does that do, Chris, for the humans? The humans get to then be trained up in AI or be applied to different higher end tasks. And that's something that we've really dove into here, us personally, not just as an offering to our customers, but me as a customer zero, is how can we make that agentic SOC work? And we're well on the way there. And we're already seeing incredibly huge returns, not just in speed, like 67% faster, but interestingly enough, completeness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Human error is a real thing. So a lot of times you'll say, but what if the AI makes an error? Like, well,
it's probably making less errors than humans. Yeah.
we're in the same position that we're in before, right?
Yeah.
And designing those operational processes in place to, put a human in a loop, to put, do some sample verification, things like that is all, well and good. But to be able to run through those alerts in machine speed is already paying dividends for us. So so we're live with an agentic SOC now. We're still getting used to it in the new world. We're still tuning it. We're still hooking up APIs to different products, but really excited about the early ROI and just real benefits that we see. And you can really, these are really easy things to measure ROI in, which I think is easy, which is great for me. And then moving next is going to be, as I mentioned, vulnerability management, a lot of good people building great things. You think about a human that, again, I don't want to minimize vulnerability management. It is the absolute basic blocking and tackling we need to do. But you have a human being that's kicking a scan off, that gets results, that tries to contextualize it, and then shoves it to different groups to make sure that they address it and then validates that it was addressed. That can be done. That can be done by. And we have a lot of people building great stuff around that. But sorry, I kind of just went off on that tangent there.
Oh, no, it's great. And I love talking about
that. Yeah.
I love talking about that too, because I think in the whole security stack, it's there's a bunch of areas where it's hype and there's a bunch of areas where it's making a difference. And I think agentic SOC is definitely a place where it's making a difference. Vulnerability management sounds like a great use case. We're really curious because of the way our platform's built. We're looking a lot at actually doing the security operations part, like the plugging things together and helping people get their infrastructure stood up using AI. So I think there's a lot of places where we can, again, make efficiencies, take away some of that boring work. We call it yak shaving. You just keep doing it.
I'm gonna steal that term. I think that what you're seeing there is, again, the base measure is how are we going to take this emerging ecosystem where I think there's an imperative to get ahead of it, to be testing and experimenting, but still delivering an ROI. We've all read the Wall Street Journal articles around AI and how, in the hype curve where, we're kind of maybe going down into the trough of whatever disillusionment or whatever it is. But I do think there's some use cases there where we can demonstrate early wins. I think the challenge for us, as me, as a CISO and as a customer of these things, is really the same thing we've had through every cycle, which is what's real, what's not, what's hype, built, what needs to be built, what needs to be experimented with. And so I think the art of it as an executive is deciding what is worth the precious capacity of your team to go do, and what would be a waste of time, what's not truly real. And what that's led me to is the traditional sort of agile is not the right word because it's not an agile coding thing, but having an agile planning mechanism. It's not like we plan a year out and we say, here's your investment, you go do it for a year, and then we come back in a year. That's now quarterly or monthly, where we're saying, okay, rapid prototype, it didn't work. What are we going to do? These other two startups, we're going to go to this, we're going to try this one out. This one doesn't seem quite ready. So let's just shift to pen testing. That's really our AI roadmap, is really a couple weeks to a couple weeks. It can't be a year to year. We did our first planning session in April. I think that was outdated by June. And then we looked again at it, and we've stuck with SOC and a few other things, but we're shifting it very real time.
Hey, it's Nicole from the LimaCharlie marketing team. Many security teams deal with tool sprawl, dozens of different solutions that create gaps in visibility and slow down response times. Our SecOps Cloud platform consolidates your security stack into a unified platform where everything works together. LimaCharlie gives you comprehensive endpoint visibility and automated response capabilities in milliseconds instead of minutes, so you can stop threats before they spread across your environment. Try our scalable infrastructure for your security services for free at LimaCharlie.io.
You talked about the scale of your organization, hundreds of thousands of customers. Like, that's a lot of alerts. It's a lot of data. AI is expensive, like per token. Like, how does that economic model scale for you guys? Like, doesn't that become restrictive at that size?
It does. It's challenging. But here's the thing. Like, for instance, in agentic SOC, right, you can go up or down the stack, right? So we've chose to put the agent model at a certain part of the stack that's actually downstream from our SIM, which is the preferred, like for our partner, that's the preferred place that it sits. But there, at least then you benefit from at least an initial filtering with the SIM. The lack of the benefit is that you still have to maintain that whole SIM space, right? You know, with all the people and the costs associated with that. So I think it's really like thinking about where you're going to get the most bang for your buck as it relates to that. I have been, we do custom AI solutions that I think there's a lot of like cost associated with that, but I'm mainly a customer of off-the-shelf products as it relates to how do I protect the company. Right. And where we run into capacity limitations, that's something where if we would have to fix it through, like I said, putting it in a downstream, filter mechanism, or, maybe we're just not right for it at the time. We have to wait for those token costs to go down. And that's fair enough too, where if that's the case, I just want to be in a position to say, this is a capability that I know is real, can provide ROI. And when the costing, comes around and becomes more advantageous, we should lean in and we should lean in quickly.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it, is just staying in the cockpit as this thing goes wherever it's going. And, speaking about cost reduction too, I just read China released like 3 new open source models, and some of them are 80% more efficient than the previous DeepSeek, which was already super efficient. So I think the cost will come down eventually, and we're sort of in this weird space where they're just throwing things at it to see what we can get out of it right now.
I think so too. And again, you have 4 or 5 major players here, mainly closed source. You have some major players there, mainly open source. But I think above all, as every major partner that I use is leaning into the AI journey, the one question I ask them is how hard it is to attract and retain the AI talent that is going to drive your roadmap. And that's really that's a really big deal. And if you're a smaller company, yet innovative, leaning in and getting that talent to make sure that you stay competitive in this era is going to be really challenging. You'll see some of the major platforms have invested heavily, are really set up, have good teams. But I'd be interested to see in the ecosystem. You mentioned like model evolution, but I'm interested in like industry evolution. Like who's gonna be there at the end and who's not. I think it's gonna be interesting to see, because it's just not all teams are created equal here in terms of capabilities. And I think some of the partners that they may become irrelevant, and if they become irrelevant, they're gonna become irrelevant like much, much faster than they would have before.
It is fascinating across the whole supply chain too, when you think about it, because it's like from chip production to like power grid capability to like, it's much more than programming talent or models. It's this huge geopolitical supply chain that makes this stuff possible, and everybody's trying to be the one that wins, because
you're expanding a little bit outside of my expertise.
yeah.
I know, I think we're very, we are clearly in a global race to get ahead of the constraints associated with the broad economic benefits that this technological wave is going to provide. So, I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I hear those things, but my day job is really just saying, how am I going to leverage this technology now to get better at what we do? Because you look at the threat side, right, Chris? Again, I think, we're very, very close. We already see significant deepfakes. We see significant increase in volume of phishing and or out-of-band phishing techniques using kind of heuristics and tone that really match exactly what the imposters, intended to be saying. And then, on top of that, I know now, when you look at the veracity of exploits of 0 days across the world, you're seeing that speed pick up more and more.
It's like an hour now.
Like an hour, man. And then it's, and it's not, So there's no choice. Like, we know the adversaries are using it. They're using it now, and it's just going to get worse and worse. And it's going to be too quick for us to kind of keep up with legacy capabilities and human timescales. It's just, and we've already seen it. And my prediction is, towards the spring of this next calendar year, is going to become patently obvious that, this is going to be the real deal.
Mm. Yeah, I read a lot of William Gibson when I was younger, and in some of his books, there's this AI fighting this AI and these clouds of nanobots, and I feel like we're edging towards that kind of future where AIs are battling each other, right?
100%. I had 2 meetings today with startups on, essentially agentic pen testing, right? Mm-hmm. And you look at that. I mean, like, what's better at attack surface management than having a swarm of agentic bots attacking your perimeter all the time that you can at least control and get feedback from, as opposed to, the bad guys doing the exact same thing. And it's interesting, like this, it is blowing up. There's at least like 2 or 3 startups that are really, really good, fill that need. But like, you can just imagine that the bad guys are coding that right now. Mm-hmm. And any sort of weakness in your attack surface, if you just look at that vector, right, outside in, any weakness could be exploited in minutes, as opposed to hours, days, months. So, getting ahead of that, I think it should be on the top of everybody's list if it isn't already.
Do you think this changes what it means to be a defender? Like, how do you maintain human accountability in human or machine-driven systems?
Wow. That's a deep question. I don't know about that, but as I one before. I think I'm not going to go like far out into the time horizon and go like, well, at some point you're not going to need a CISO because the decisions can be made by, right, all-knowing, bot. But I think the human accountability is still it's still the same. Mm-hmm. It's still associated with someone like myself and the team getting together and saying, we have a risk, like we understand our risk profile, which is a business risk profile, cyber. We have capabilities. We're knowledgeable of those capabilities to reduce that risk. Where do we spend our precious time and dollars to get that return? I don't think that changes in this world. I think it's harder in the short term just because the market's so saturated and everything's AI, but it isn't AI. Everyone's lit. You got to figure out what's real and what's not. So we spend a lot of our time, when you think about human accountability, we spend a ton of our time just figuring out what's real and how do we stay ahead of it. But in the end, it's all about, you have a business, you have a budget to reduce risk, and that could be cyber risk, that could be financial risk, that could be legal, regulatory, whatever risk. You have that budget. How are you making your most informed decision to be a careful and thoughtful steward with that investment? And in this day and age, I think being a careful and thoughtful steward with that investment is leaning in on the defense of AI-driven attacks. And I think if you're just kind of like laying back on your laurels and doing cyber the same old way we've always done cyber, I think you're going to find yourself behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
I don't know if that answers the question, because that was a really like crazy.
Well, it's just interesting because I think there's a lot of, anxiety around job security and what it's going to mean for the future. And, there's a lot of really smart people in tech that are working with this stuff and seeing what it's capable of and wondering how they fit. So I don't expect you to have the answer. I'm just curious.
I bias towards abundance, my friend. That's what I do. And I don't think we have any other choice, right? Again, I think if you look at the full AI industry at large, we're going to go through. We've been in the hype cycle. We are going to go through this. We're going to go up here, and then we're going to normalize, right, over time. I think it's going to be a quicker turn than we've had in the past. But in the end, I look at every single example, and I say, would the human being like to be doing these other tasks and trained up and advance their career and have opportunities? Again, I don't want to speak for everyone, but probably, because the old path, if you look at like AI replacement of just like lower tier analyst sorts of things, is you start in the SOC, you grinded, shift work for 4 or 5 years. Maybe you showed a spark and someone said, oh, well, let's do this to here. Mm-hmm. You take every single one of those people, you train them up, they can be threat hunters, or they can be this, or they can go off and do some other task. And I think in general, that's a better outcome than, leaving those tasks that are going to be too slow anyway to the humans. I think it's better for the human too. But from a job displacement perspective, I mean, I think the biggest challenge we have when we think about adoption of these tools is this is going to happen. Mm-hmm. If you're the type of person that puts the blocker up and says, we're not going to do this because of fear, I would think you probably need to really rethink that. Because if you're going to, that gets back to everything around security where you're the party of no. You don't want to be the party of no. You want to be the party of yes, or yes, but maybe we need to do this quick, or yes, but maybe slow down, right? But you want to be the party of yes, and businesses are going to be driving to this anyway. So to be a modern cyber professional, you also need to lean in, and it's going to
the genie's out of the bottle. There's no putting
the genie's out of the bottle. Look, it wasn't. Look, mobile was uncomfortable. Remember, mm-hmm. Cloud was uncomfortable, right? All these things have been uncomfortable, but in the end, look at all the opportunities that's provided, right? Mm-hmm. Just all the crazy tools and capabilities on this thing, all the expertise that people have that lean in on that. Look at the
opportunity, the 2-person startup teams that built, Netflix and these massive cloud-based companies, right? That was impossible before. So,
but look at every single job associated with cloud, mm-hmm. right? I'm sure the on-prem Unix operators in the data center of your company in 2011 were really worried about what would happen. And again, I'm being a little. Obviously, they're not super comparable, but in my opinion, they are kind of comparable. And if you look, I'm not a history major or anything, but if you look back in history, every major technology revolution or industrial revolution has been met with more opportunity, not less.
Yeah. Okay. So I got 2 more for you.
Go for it.
One around AI in the SOC or the security stack. So what's one thing not being done today that if you could see it being done by AI, it would just blow your mind with what you expected to be able to do right now?
Well, you mentioned in the SOC, right? So at some point, I want to decouple traditional SIEM use cases from the AI. So right now, I mentioned we have it in Serial, which is great and provides a lot of great value, essentially lower tier human replacement, good contextualization of what they're seeing, et cetera, et cetera. But it's still dependent in this current model as of November of this year. It's still dependent on this intelligence-driven, human-driven use case process within a SIEM. I want that to be blown out of the water. I want to see AI in the Security Operations Center looking at new and novel sort of opportunities and use cases to find bad guys in the telemetry that it's fed. Now, you mentioned token cost. Clearly, that's a restriction, right? But at some point in time, when do you feed it all telemetry data? No bifurcation. Well, this is less relevant, and it goes here in cold storage, and this goes here, and feed it all, and it finds new and novel use cases and can find a bad guy, needle in a haystack, without any sort of intervention associated with humans typing a use case or some sort of thing. I think that's very, very close. I think that's close. Now, number 2, which just came to me today, I'm not going to give the person credit for it because I think the confidential conversation is AI. I had mentioned adversarial AI, testing your networks, right? Mm-hmm. Attack surface, finding 0 days before the bad guys find 0 days, before the vendors find 0 days. So I never thought of this before today. In fact, this is very timely. Is they're hey, we have this bot, essentially, this agent going and testing this application, and we're finding new and novel 0 days all the time. I'm that's really, really cool, because then you're not just dependent on a major technology vendor and their internal processes to see it, or the good guys going, the bad guys reverse engineer this and did it. You literally have agentic at machine speed, good guys finding this stuff now. And that really, I'm telling you what, Chris, that blew my mind today. I was
that's very cool.
Really, really cool. So, and it's real now. So it's not like it's not pie in the sky. Like they're literally startups working on this right now, discovering things. And when you think about making just kind of our digital world a little bit safer, those are two just incredible advancements, I think, that are going to put us over the edge.
Very cool. Okay, this is the last one I ask it of everybody who comes on the show. I do a roll-up episode at the end of the year with everybody's predictions. It can be as wide or as narrow as you want. Do you have any predictions for the future of cybersecurity?
Gosh. We said before this, you probably should send me these questions so I had some preparations. Yeah. Look, I think we've talked about it a lot here. Mm-hmm. I think the future of cybersecurity will be machine on machine. And I don't think I'm saying anything crazy or, this isn't like an Einstein level analysis, because we've talked about it all episode.
Yeah.
But in the end, if you're in cybersecurity, your job ultimately in the future is going to be directing the machines to the maximum advantage, just like you direct human teams right now.
Yeah.
So the sooner you can get on that, I think the better. I'm not touching on quantum. That's going to be a whole different minefield when it comes about. But I think the future of cybersecurity will be that machine on machine, war, for lack of a better word, cyber warfare. And, I think the opportunity there, again, you probably figured out I'm optimist here. I think the opportunity is perhaps the technology revolution will tip the scales back in favor away from eminently funded nation states. Maybe, maybe technology will even the playing field a little bit, where the human hour, right? The unlimited human hours that our adversaries may have and the unlimited dollar amounts that they have may just be a little bit less lopsided when you add in amazing technology that we can leverage that operates at machine speed. At least that's my hope, sir.
Yeah. Awesome, Michael. I really enjoyed this conversation. This was one of my favorite ones so far this year. So thanks for coming out. And we'll maybe have you back on in a year to see how everything panned out.
I would love to anytime. And appreciate what you do. Appreciate what you do for the industry. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate the time.
All right. Take care, Sid.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of another great conversation. You can support our show by sharing your favorite episode with a friend, subscribe, give us a rating, or leave a comment on your favorite podcast platform. If you want to be part of the conversation, you can join our community forum at community.limacharlie.io. Thanks for listening in, and we'll see you on the next one. The Cybersecurity Defenders Podcast is hosted and produced by Christopher Luft. The show is co-produced and edited by Sam Blake with graphics by Amr Al-Khatib. Sponsored by LimaCharlie, scalable infrastructure for your security services. Visit limacharlie.io to get started for free.